Atheist Nomads, episode 333. Feels good to be yourself with Theresa Thorn.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin, and joining me is Lauren.
Hello.
And in a bit,
Wait. 333.
Yeah.
Half of 666.
Oh.
Cool.
Does that mean we have to keep doing the show for another 7 years?
For 333 episodes.
Which, okay, it's taken almost 8 years to get here, but
yeah,
that first almost 2 years we were doing every other week.
This is the point where you say, according to my calculations.
6.4 years.
6.4 years. Yeah. Not going to happen, but.
Yeah, it could. It could. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Hey, it's less time than the heat death of the universe.
What? When is that supposed to happen?
Like billions and billions of years.
Right.
Maybe even trillions.
My mind flipped out.
Yeah. So it also guaranteed that it would be longer than Trump could possibly be president.
Nice. We'll see how much fodder we have for the next 6 years.
How angry the news makes us, and if I have to continue yelling in a microphone about it to keep saying.
Yep.
For example, President Donald Trump, who is about to become the third president in U.S. history to be impeached. None have been convicted and removed from office, but impeachment is the constitutional equivalent of an indictment.
Yeah, it's happening. Right. And that went forward today.
The articles
yesterday.
of impeachment have been drafted. They will be passed out of the House Judiciary Committee soon, and then likely next week will be voted on and probably passed by the full House Representatives.
All right. Crazy times we live in.
Yep. This has only happened.
I should have peach pie.
But President Donald Trump has signed a executive order that has the aim of fighting anti-Semitism on college campuses.
Is that a huge problem on college campuses here in the U.S.?
No.
I know that there's some, white supremacist stuff going on, but I wasn't aware of any
At least not as much of a problem with anti-Semitism as, say, maybe coming out of the White House.
Huh. Yeah, there must be a catch.
Trump's Twitter account, I'm sure, is home of more anti-Semitism than all U.S. colleges combined. The catch is, what this is going to do is define Judaism as a nationality and not just a religion.
And that nationality is inherently
the Jewish,
Israeli.
The Jewish nationality, which isn't necessarily Israeli. It's just identifying that if you are a person of Jewish heritage, that is a in and of itself an ethnic identity.
Which is how it's been used for a long time.
Right. Commonly been used like that. And it's not completely without precedence to have religion be a factor of identifying identity, national identity. Indian and Pakistani.
No, that's absolutely true.
A huge factor in that. Yeah, there's two countries.
You can be Jewish without being Jewish.
Yeah. You also get... So the idea here is Jews are a ethnic group, and there is a specific rule that was created as part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to fight racism on college campuses.
Yeah.
To punish schools for taking part in any racist activities, supporting racist organizations, or permitting the activities of racist organizations on their campuses.
Okay. Yes.
So if you...
The school itself cannot promote any of that stuff. Student
or tolerate
clubs.
it.
Oh, okay. Because there's been a lot of white supremacist stuff going around. That's...
It's not supposed to be tolerated by colleges.
Most of them aren't, I don't think. But
what this is specifically being used to do is make the boycott Israel movement prohibited on college campuses.
Which, as we've discussed before, you can be anti-Israel and not anti-Jewish.
Right.
Because Israel is a nation that is committing genocidal atrocities.
It's an apartheid state.
Yeah, you can be anti the country and not anti the people because...
You're right. Yeah, I was never old enough to be against apartheid South Africa when apartheid South Africa was a thing.
Yeah, but you did see Mandela die twice, right?
Or 3 times.
Or 3 times.
But looking back on it, it would have been easy to say that you aren't against the Afrikaners, but you are against apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
There is a distinction between the people and the country and the activities of that country.
Yes.
There is a distinction between Jewish people, Israeli people, and the nation of Israel.
Yes.
You can even hate all Israelis and not be anti-Jewish.
Yeah, because that's not the same thing.
But people who are boycotting...
But it's great. It's really great if you want to wipe out a campus protest by claiming, say, hey, this is anti-Semitic. And they're like, we're not talking about the religion. We're talking about the country that the U.S. is supporting. It's like, nope, too bad.
Not talking about the religion, not talking about the people group, talking about a nation state that is participating in apartheid practices.
That the U.S. is actively supporting.
Yep.
Lots.
Yep.
Because, we're so democratic and forward-thinking and whatever.
And, I would love for there to be a good case of Donald Trump doing something that I can actually get behind 100%. But every single one of them seems...
There's one.
Oh.
His executive order to solidify federal laws against animal cruelty.
Yes, that was awesome.
Although some also complain that it's going to make things so vague that many prosecutions will fall through.
Yeah.
But it honestly is benevolent. I don't see any kind of back alley dealings with that one.
This one, there is. It's all about supporting the nation state of Israel, which is a part of evangelical end times belief that the state of Israel must exist so that they can kill enough Muslims to be able to tear down the Dome of the Rock, rebuild the temple, and they have to tear down the Dome of the Rock because that's where the temple has to be built.
Right.
And so they can sacrifice the red heifer and bring about the end of the world. Mm-hmm. Which I've said before in the show, tearing down the Dome of the Rock will bring about the end of the world.
Yes. Just not the way that they were.
Yeah.
We're not even get to the heifer.
Right. The red heifer will die.
All of the red heifers.
All the red heifers will die.
Aww.
But not because of...
There's the part of my brain is all of humanity dying in a nuclear apocalypse. Okay, fine. But all of the animals, all the domesticated animals also dying. It's aww.
Yeah.
Those are our pets.
All right. So
Rocco Taco.
Moving to another I country, India.
Okay. I was okay, there's only a few here that I can think of. So not Iceland.
India's parliament has passed a new law that will grant automatically citizenship to immigrants from 3 neighboring countries.
Oh.
So this will apply to anyone in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan who wants to move to India and become a citizen.
Oh, I was going to say good for Bangladeshis since they're being driven out of their country by climate change.
There is one exception.
Oh, no.
No Muslims.
God frickin' fuck.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
This will apply to religious minorities in those countries. Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis.
Everybody.
And Christians.
Yeah.
Not Muslims.
God damn it. They're people too, Discriminating based on religion is such bullshit because it's all bullshit.
Now, there's 2 groups that are really unhappy about this.
Okay.
One is the 200 million Muslims who live in India.
200 million. Yeah, can't even wrap my head around how many people that is.
There are more Muslims in India than there are people in Japan.
Yeah.
There are more Muslims in India than there are in people in the United States west of the Mississippi.
Yeah. It blows my... Yeah, okay. So,
all of Mexico on down... we're talking about a population about the size of Brazil's. Of just one minority religious group in India. They are pissed about this.
Yeah.
As are everybody else who believe in India as a secular democracy, which it was founded as.
Yeah. They're throwing that right out the window. But then again, so is the U.S.
Yeah.
And we're constantly trampling on that.
We've got this disgusting right-wing, often theocratic wave across the world. And India's current Hindu nationalist administration is no better or not really much worse than the U.S.'s Christian nationalist administration.
Right. It's just whoever's in power wants to keep power, and you do that by keeping the minorities downtrodden.
Yep.
Be better.
In New York, a judge has dismissed a lawsuit that anti-vax groups had filed against the state. Now, these lawsuits claimed that the new vaccine mandate that does not include any religious or personal belief exemptions, like to send your kids to school in New York State, you have to have them up to date on vaccinations or have a legitimate medical exemption. That is
okay.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
That brings New York in line with California, Vermont, and Mississippi. Mississippi.
Oh, because they had a huge outbreak out there, right?
No, Mississippi never put in religious and personal belief exemptions.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. Now, they have declared the measles outbreak in New York ended, so that is good. But this lawsuit was claiming that this new vaccine requirement was an example of state religious hostility.
Vaccines have nothing to... No, that's not true. There's lots of people who claim religious reasons for avoiding vaccinations. So, I mean, kinda. I can see where their argument is coming from.
Now, there is long-standing, like 120 plus year old precedent that public health rules do not have to take religion into account.
Right.
There is also very long-standing precedent that if your law applies equally to everyone, if it happens to infringe on one religious group or a couple of small religious groups, tough titties.
Yeah, basically.
It doesn't matter. If religion is not a factor in that rule, it should not matter.
There is a limit to personal liberties, and that is known as the greater good.
Yep.
And you can only hope that the government is able to tell what the greater good is. In this case, I'd say, yeah, you're right. They've got, hundreds of years worth of data points to show that if you let people be sick, they're going to get other people sick.
And if you look at if it was just people with legitimate religious objections,
that would be such a small amount of people.
Like historically, it's been 1% to 2%.
I was going to say 1%.
And
it's the bullshit people.
Yeah. And when it's just 1 or 2%
or whatever that
doesn't impact herd immunity, and there isn't a real compelling interest to say no religious exemptions.
But the people, what I find funny is like here in Idaho, if you don't like the rules, just homeschool your kid. It's scary how many people are like, well, I'm not vaccinating my kids, so I'll just teach them from home. And how easy that is. Those kids may not turn out socially okay. Be pretty awkward.
Yeah.
But
and there will be some in New York who will respond that way.
Yeah.
Especially considering the specific group they are targeting with this is Orthodox Jews who do not have an actual belief against vaccination. They just don't care. It's just not a thing they're concerned about. And just not a thing that they do in their community.
Well, that's easy. You start up free clinics and you can turn that in a generation.
Now, it had kind of started out like that, but any group that has not had a tradition of vaccination, when you start getting anti-vax propaganda, then people start having an easier time saying, oh yeah, that's why we don't do it. As opposed to just,
because we've never done it. Yeah.
And so it's gotten worse.
We've never trusted the government to stick a needle in us.
Yeah. So it's gotten worse. So the state has had to clamp down because New York doesn't want to be the state that ends measles eradication in the U.S. by being the first state where measles becomes endemic again.
Yeah. I wonder which state that's going to be.
And it came close.
Ugh.
Like,
gross.
It needs to be continuing. An outbreak needs to continue for a year, and then it's endemic. They missed it by a couple weeks.
Wow. Do you think that they're actually just saying that it's gone?
Nah.
All right.
Nah.
They're like, we don't want to be that state. We better just tell people that the outbreak is over.
And for our final news story, we now have 2 or 3 active E. coli outbreaks related to salads. Mostly romaine lettuce.
Too bad it's not iceberg. At least iceberg is crap. Literally.
In Seattle.
Not literally.
They have found most of their cases have all been from Evergreen's restaurants. These are vegetarian restaurants.
Oh, that sucks. It's hard enough being vegetarian.
Yeah.
Well, vegetarianism could kill you.
But the take I have to have with it is Adventist prophecy includes a part that in its encouragement of vegetarianism is that in the end days, meat will be unsafe to eat. And what's really happening?
The opposite.
Yep.
That's funny. That's sad, but funny. Yeah, if they would stop spraying their crops with raw fertilizer, maybe this wouldn't happen as much. If they were stop being so organic and actually use safe products,
that would resolve a fair amount of it.
Yeah, not all of it. I mean, that's fair enough, but
there's going to be some, but that will resolve a lot.
Much raw fertilizer.
Yeah. Well, if you want to call it organic,
that's all you can use.
Yeah. It's you spray shit over your field
and then hope it washes off by the time you get it to market.
Yep.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Organic my ass.
And yeah, no wonder we're getting E. coli outbreaks. There are much more sanitary ways to fertilize your crops.
Yeah. That's what scientists do.
Now, it hasn't been exclusively with organic crops, though.
No, because you're also allowed to use that stuff for... Of course, we got to do something with all that shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I find that just hilarious that, yeah, it's not meat that's becoming unsafe. It's vegetables. And a big difference in the two, you aren't eating meat raw.
Yeah.
You can kill most of the stuff that harm you in meat by cooking it.
Yeah. You just basically have to keep washing at that point. Salads and bean sprouts, and you don't cook that.
The raw food diet?
Yeah.
Yeah, you better be washing the shit out of everything.
And most of the time it doesn't help anyway.
Yeah. All right, so, and now it's time for the interview.
Oh, yay.
Which Lauren was trying to get Kylie to sleep during.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah. And we are now joined by Theresa Thorn. She is the author of It Feels Good to Be Yourself, a book about gender identity, which is written for 4 to 8-year-olds. She's also previously, along with the co-host of her podcast, One Bad Mother, wrote, You're Doing a Great Job, 100 Ways You're Winning at Parenting, and is half of the podcasting power couple. Theresa, welcome to Atheist Nomads.
Thank you so much for having me, Dustin.
And to borrow a question from your show when you have guests, who lives in your house?
Sure. So I live in my house, and my husband, Jesse, lives in my house. We have 3 kids. Gracie is 8, Oscar is 6, and Curtis is going to be 3 in about 2 months.
All right.
And then we also have 2 scruffy old dogs.
Scruffy old dogs. I'm sure the kids, I'm sure they sometimes run into some tolerance issues with the children.
Yes, definitely. One of them is actually great with the kids and very tolerant, and the other one just avoids them at all costs. And when she can't avoid them, she tries to bite them.
Yep. Yeah, we have a probably 10 or 11-year-old brain damaged blind Chihuahua
My heart.
Who Kylie just wants to snuggle. Everybody just wants to snuggle Rocco.
Of course.
But,
yeah.
Rocco knows that children are very unpredictable and dangerous, and he is very fragile. And the 7-year-old, almost 8-year-old corgi also can get a little overwhelmed.
I mean, I think they're being smart, so I can't blame them for it. But I will say, I was relieved when, like, a year or two ago, the one dog that gets along with our kids started, like, actually becoming friends with our kids.
Oh, nice.
Whereas, like, before that, I really just felt like the dogs and the kids were just on two separate parts of the globe at all times. And it kind of made me sad because I always kind of had dreams of my kids being really happy that they had dogs. Because when I was a kid, I always wanted a dog. And for a long time, we couldn't have a dog. And so I thought that it would be, I always just imagined, like, that from a young age, my kids would have this, rewarding relationship with our pets. And that has taken a lot longer to even begin to start to take place.
And okay, so let's go ahead and get into the meat of it. You recently wrote, it's been a few months since it was released.
Yeah.
Your first children's book.
Yes.
And it's a book that there are no children's books about, right?
There are other children's books about gender identity. Mine is one of a very small few that directly address gender identity and sort of try to give kids and families and teachers language to talk about the subject comfortably and fluently.
And that can be definitely a tricky thing. I know doing this podcast, I early on started covering news stories where gender identity issues were important as the religious right started getting very unhappy about trans people trying to get rights. And I quickly figured out I needed to talk to some trans people so I could figure out the correct terminology and verbiage and not make an ass out of myself. The language can be complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. That's what I was sort of trying to address with the book. We found that when our oldest child socially transitioned and she identifies as a transgender girl, when we began that journey, we had a lot of that same kind of education to do for ourselves. My husband and I, who are both cisgender, and we did educate ourselves, and, we've been lucky enough to have supportive friends and family. And at the same time, we found that a lot of the folks who really wanted to be supportive, they also were just still a little awkward around the terminology, or just a little, they had something sort of right, but not quite right. Or, they wanted to speak with their kids in their own family about gender identity, but they were sort of afraid they were going to get it wrong. And we just found that, there was really like a lack of access to this education for young kids and for families who want to have these conversations.
Okay. And so rather than having to continue to have these conversations, you wrote a book.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Now I can just hand people the book.
Perfect. And also get a lot more reach that way.
Yeah, for sure. I've been hearing from people all over the country who have been able to access the book, whether they bought it or they found it at their library. And it seems like it's making its way around. So that's been very gratifying.
Awesome. And could you kind of walk us through a little bit of little more about the book? It's illustrated, correct?
So my book, it's called It Feels Good to Be Yourself, a book about gender identity. And it's a beautiful picture book that was illustrated by the trans non-binary artist Noah Greenye. And it's just the whole sort of vibe of the book is just very beautiful. The children featured in the book are very diverse in a variety of different ways. There are depictions of many different kinds of families throughout the book. And the book really centers around 4 children one of whom identifies as trans, one is cisgender, and then 2 are non-binary, but they identify differently between each other within the non-binary spectrum.
Okay.
So we meet these 4 kids, and then we also get to kind of see how one of the kids, the trans girl, a little bit about her story and how she came out to her family and how that happened. Her parents, when she was born, thought that she was a boy, but as she got older, she came and told them that, you know, even though they've always thought of her as a boy, she really feels like a girl. And then the rest of the book is sort of all about just showing kids that there are lots of different ways to identify, that our bodies do not define our gender, and that there are more than 2 genders. And in fact, sort of a theme of the book is that there are so many possible ways to be in the world that there are too many to fit in a book. So, yeah, so that's sort of the message of the book.
Right. And ultimately, just be yourself.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. That sounds pretty awesome. And to write it for, you know, that age range is, that's got to be. Did you find that challenging?
So it's interesting. I think the thing that made me realize that I should write this book was not so much that, you know, what I was saying before, that I felt that so many people were not able to talk about this subject in a comfortable way. It was more that I realized one day that I was doing this. I was saying the things from this book all the time to my own kids. And that I had, you know, like as parents, I'm sure you do this too. We find ways to explain the world to our kids in a way that we feel our kids will understand, in an age appropriate way. And our kids have all kinds of questions about the world. And I often find myself like answering a question that I've never thought of how to explain this to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old before. But I think about what the answer is, and then I just find a way to say it in a simple way, but in a true way. And I realized that I was doing that. I was taking what I was learning about gender identity, and I was finding a way to talk about it with my kids in a way that they would understand. Because I had a 5-year-old who, you know, felt like she was a girl, but that everybody had told her she was a boy for a long time. And so she was going through that thought process. And then I had a 3-year-old at the time who thought he had an older brother, but it turned out really had an older sister. So we were going through that process with him at the same time. And then I was also pregnant at the time. And so there was the conversation of who is this baby? You know, who is this baby going to be? We don't know who this baby is going to be. And so there were so many opportunities to have these conversations, and they actually were so rewarding. They became a really kind of joyful thing for us to explore as a family. And in fact, you know, we had some resistance from our 3-year-old initially when his older sibling was transitioning. You know, our 3-year-old at a certain point was like, what are you talking about? Like, no, that's not what I call this person. But then
to like a 2 or 3-year-old, everything is so black and white, absolutely concrete.
Well, yeah. And I think that also they are learning so much all the time that when they get a new piece of knowledge about the world, they really hold on to it for dear life because they're trying so hard to make sense of the world. And so this one thing that our 3-year-old knew to be true was that he had an older brother, and his older brother had this particular name. And so to tell this kid that, you know, actually, that's not actually, we were actually wrong. Sorry, kid, that we were wrong. That was tough. But the thing is, it wasn't that tough. Like it took a few days. It took maybe a couple weeks. But then once he got used to it and got comfortable with it, like it's been so fun to watch his growth and kind of journey with having an older trans sibling too, because he is like super fascinated by the whole idea of gender as well. And he has, he sometimes reads, like we have other books around the house that are about gender, and he likes to read them, and he's brought them to school. And he just, he finds it really interesting, and he's really proud that he's a cisgender boy. That's like really exciting to him, because it's like something about himself that he has discovered that he knows and feels to be true. And so that's been really cool too.
Yeah, and I've even gotten to see some of it with Kylie, where she's starting to learn a little more vocabulary for her anatomy. And so one that she's recently gotten is nipple, which she's pronouncing Oppo. And she knows that mommy's nipples and daddy's nipples are very different, but that we both have them, and that she has them too.
Yeah.
And they're all different, but we all have them. And that's fascinating, watching that concept develop in her brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just, it's amazing. And like what you're talking about earlier with trying to present things in an age appropriate way. Kylie tells me, or not necessarily tells me, but I can read in her face whether or not I'm succeeding at that. And it's amazing how much good feedback children will provide on that.
That's really true.
So now that sounds like you were going through a ridiculous amount of transition in your life as a whole, not just having a child that was transitioning, but 5 is the age to be starting kindergarten.
Yes.
New baby on the way. That's some major fundamental changes in your family dynamics. That must have been tough, having that extra layer going on.
It was. It's honestly, a lot of parts of it are blurry. I think the part about starting kindergarten and the gender transition, those are so many parts of that are very crystal clear in my memory. But the other surrounding circumstances sort of fell by the wayside, I think. Just because so much of I think just as a parent, like so much of my inner thought life was surrounding just processing what was going on with Gracie. And so I think around that time, my brain was just very busy catching up to my new reality.
Yeah, that would be. And did Gracie start transitioning before the start of kindergarten or midway through the year?
It was midway through the year. And in fact, prior to starting kindergarten, Jesse and I had no sense that we had a trans child, really. We just, we knew that she wanted her hair to be long, and we knew that she asked for barrettes and dresses sometimes. And there had been she'd said things here and there that were maybe a little confusing to us. And she's just always been she had always been kind of an offbeat kid, like kind of her own person. And so we never, and like Jesse and I, we're from a very progressive part of California. We both went to arts high school, and neither of us were approaching our parenting journey as like our kids need to conform. That's never been really that important to us. But I think had we been more interested in kids who were conforming, we might have noticed earlier that Gracie might be trans. There were indicators of it. But so by the time she was in kindergarten, she was really still presenting as a boy. And then it was really around like October, November of that fall semester of kindergarten that she let us know that she's really a girl. And Even in the beginning when she began presenting more as a girl and using the name Gracie and using she and her pronouns, it was still several weeks, and I would say maybe even months before Jessie and I, respectively, really sort of realized that she really is a girl. So we were accepting and supportive before we really internalized the reality of it.
Right. Which it can be easy with young children to think that it's a game. It's some part of the fantasy world that is blending out into real life. And it could be really easy to miss that. No, this is actually real.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I can't really put my finger on what I thought was happening. Like, I don't think I had some other idea of what it was. I never thought like, oh, it's a phase. Like I just thought, I don't know what's happening, but I had done enough reading by then that I realized the right thing to do was to go with it for sure. And so I was going with it, but it wasn't that I thought it was something else. It was just that I had no idea what was going on.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah, that would be, all right. So then, sounds like she had to kind of tell you quite a few times.
Yes,
before you got the message.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
And then, how did that all go at school?
It mostly went okay at school. Let's see. Her teacher was supportive. Her principal was supportive. Her school generally was supportive. The other, like the community, like the parent community, we'd only known these people for a couple of months. Mm-hmm. She didn't have kids in her kindergarten class from preschool for whatever reason. Okay. So we didn't know a lot of the families very well, but I had several families reach out to me personally just to say, like, this is great. We're very happy that Gracie's here and we support you guys 100%, which was so wonderful, honestly, so wonderful, and meant so much to me. And then, we had there were definitely like a few just little things where people said like, oh, I think maybe they're too young for this, or like people just kind of looking in a way that you could tell they just didn't understand. Gracie didn't experience much bullying, especially in that first year. What we found was harder actually was later on, after she, like the next year, she was still at the same school. She's a first grader, and the classes sort of got mixed up. So she had some kids in her first grade who hadn't ever known her as a boy, and then some kids who had known her previously.
Right.
And so suddenly it came up again, because it was like some of these kids knew her history and some of them didn't. And by then she really was presenting like a girl, like most people wouldn't blink, or most people, when they look at her, would just see a girl. They wouldn't think like, oh, what's going on here? Like there was, she just clearly looked like a girl by then. And, by traditional societal standards, whatever it means to really look like a girl.
Because at that age, anatomically, there's not a huge difference with clothes on.
No. Yeah, no. Yeah, exactly. There's really only the indicators that we impose, culturally. So it somehow started to come up again more in first grade, where, kids kind of wanted to remind her that they knew that she had been a boy before, or people would say, well, you're really a boy, or they would use, some people would continue to use her birth name. And so that was tough. And around that time, we really started pushing the school to do some education. And that began like a year-long process of us trying to get the school to do some education in a way that we felt was safe and appropriate and wouldn't single Gracie out. And ultimately she ended up changing schools for other reasons, more for learning and academic reasons. But I will say it's been much easier in her new school where the first time people see her, they see her as a girl. So even if / once people learn of her history, to them, she's still a girl because that was their first impression of her.
Right. That clean start, that would make sense. That would make it easier.
I think so. I mean, I think, unfortunately I mean, it's unfortunately for Gracie, she has parents who talked about her publicly as a boy for years. Mm-hmm. So we are aware that she doesn't have the privilege that some kids would have of, potentially living their life stealth if they wanted to. But we just try to basically, we can't go back and change what we did before. So We're just trying to respect her life and her privacy as best we can going forward.
All right. And, since you do a parenting podcast, that would be, there's a fine balance there to try to find.
Yes. It's ongoing. It really is. Like I mean, Biz and I, we have kind of always said that the show is really about us. It's not about our kids. And so we stay away from telling like cute stories about our kids unless we can like really justify it with it's really, how it impacted us or what our process was about what happened. We really try to stick with the show being about like our experiences as parents and our sort of like mental health as parents. But yeah, I mean, like obviously we're talking about our families. So, sometimes I will say one of my kids, blah, 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 blah. Whenever I can, just so that, I can still talk about something that happened, but I'm not singling somebody out who might have their feelings hurt later.
Okay. Yeah. And I know with, when I've heard Jesse on some of his shows talking about your children, he's always really good at providing just enough information for the context of that exact story, which tells you really nothing about your children.
I know. He's so good at that. I don't know how he does that. It's a special skill. He's very good at that.
All right. And then shifting gears, your podcast, One Bad Mother. This has been going on for what, about 7-8 years now?
Yes, it has been, it's been about 6.5, 7. It's been like 7 years. Yeah. Almost 7 years, coming up on 7 years in a few months.
Okay. And so, how would you describe to people who know nothing about your show, which I'm sure most of my listeners don't know about your show, how would you describe the show?
Sure. So the show is Biz Ellis, who hosts the show, and I am the co-host. And we show up every week, once a week, to talk about whatever is going on for us as parents. And then we sometimes have an interview with a guest, and we share a genius moment and a fail, and we play a call from a parent having a breakdown. And the show, I would say the one quality that most describes us is non-judgmental. We realized very early on, we went there to laugh mainly and be supportive of each other and to not feel bad about the parts of parenting that felt really hard to us. And we realized that the best way to do that was really to be constantly reminding ourselves that there is no one way to parent children. And that for the most part, really, most parents are really trying very hard and are really doing the best job that they can And it can be really hard, and there isn't always a lot of recognition of that. And so we try to remind people that, everybody is really doing a good job, and to kind of just feel good about our accomplishments, even if we fall apart on a daily basis. We've also done a lot of things and a lot of good things on a daily basis. And we try to just laugh when we can, because so much of it is really just hilarious.
Yeah. I listened to your podcast for about, I'd say for about a year. And it was really helpful when I started listening, I think it was probably a month or two before Kylie was born. And then listened for about a year after that. I found it really helpful hearing people who have been, have children that are, not really big kids, but getting to be bigger kids, still struggling with even some of the, struggling with the toddler stuff. And it was awesome to hear people openly sharing their frustrations and struggles.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've heard from a lot of people, that like basically a lot of new parents feel like they're failing because it's so much harder than they expected it to be. And even if they are doing a good job, they feel like they're not, because it's so much harder than they expected it to be. And if they're not loving every moment of it, they feel guilty for that. So then when they listen to our show, they realize, it's okay. Like I can still be a great parent. I can still love my kids and be proud of what I'm doing, and I can love parts of it, but I can also hate parts of it, and I can screw up, and that's okay. And I think it just takes a load off for new parents.
Yeah, and I've fortunately it is starting to shift in our society, but I've also noticed that almost all of that pressure is on moms. As a general rule, what I've kind of gleaned is that to be a good dad, you just don't abuse and damage your children. Being present and non-abusive, and you're a pretty good dad at that point.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
But a mom who's not perfect is a horrible mother.
Yeah, it's very unfair. Yeah.
Mom shouldn't be held to such a high standard, and dad should be held to a much higher standard.
I could not agree more. Let's have a podcast about that.
All right. So I know I've heard on Jesse on some of his shows mention that he's an atheist. I don't think I ever heard you identify as anything in particular, but you are, raising children in a non-religious way.
Correct. Yeah, I guess I'm probably agnostic. I was raised Catholic, but my parents were sort of on the fence. And by the time I was in 7th grade, we had basically left the church.
Okay.
And then like my mom has gone in and out of like wanting to be involved in religion since that time, but my dad is like done forever. And I've basically been agnostic since that time.
All right. And so growing up, was it kind of a traditional Catholic household?
I don't know. I feel like there's so many Catholic people in the world. I don't know what a traditional Catholic household looks like. I mean, we were...
That's a fair point.
Yeah. I mean, we were Northern California Catholic people, I guess. So, very kind of like compassionate, progressive type Catholic people, okay. I guess.
All right.
If that's a thing.
It is. Yeah. Okay. And then, all right. So then around, you said around 7th grade, then your family lapsed from the church.
Yeah, there was like all this molestation stuff that came out from my parents' generation, and it was a rough go of it for a while. And we just had to be done with it.
And that timing, would that be even before the Boston Globe broke the big story on the national scene?
Yeah, it was well before that. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So this was something that Catholics were well aware was going on.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And identified as a problem, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So...
I mean, I will tell you, there was a time where I went to a Catholic school. I went to a Catholic school from 4th grade through 7th grade. And my parents specifically told me multiple times not to go anywhere with a priest. Do not go anywhere with a priest. Do not go anywhere no matter what. No matter what, you say no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. You know, we try to teach our children how to not get into trouble.
Yes.
And not get into bad situations. And if you know that Catholic priests have a tendency to rape children, then you'd tell your child to stay away from the priest.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
But still send them to Catholic school.
Yeah. There's some definite cognitive dissonance there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
don't go anywhere alone with the priest, but still go to the school where the priest is in charge.
Yes, exactly. You know, it was a journey for them too. It was a process. It was their childhood. You know, it was like it was in their bones much more than it was in my bones. So I understand that it took some time, you know, for them.
Yeah. All right. So then your family left the church and then you just went on living life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I think a lot of my value system probably comes from Catholicism in a sense, or at least my family's culture that was sort of grounded in Catholicism. But I didn't feel something missing when we left the church personally. Even as a kid who had prayed and did use prayer from time to time as a kid, leaving the church did not feel like a loss for me personally.
So basically, you've taken the good of the values that you were raised with. From listening to your podcast, I know you also have kept a lot of the old Catholic guilt.
Yeah.
But sounds like you've done a really good job of adapting to and adopting more of just general modern mainstream progressive values, or starting to become mainstream progressive values.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I will admit to not being the most deliberate as far as like how I feel like I've formed my values for myself as a parent and for our family. I think one thing that's so nice about religion, right, is the list of rules. Like, that's so nice. And I don't think, like, I think that if I were challenged with the exercise of coming up with what our value system is, I could come up with what it is. But I don't think that I've really thought a lot about a framework for that. I think it's more just, you know, evolving in sort of an ad hoc way. And then the stuff that works and feels right is the stuff that sticks around.
Right.
But I do sometimes wonder, like, am I forgetting to instill something important in my kids that, like, was a part of my religion that somehow is going to be missing for them? Like, is there something that, like, for example, Jesse and I have talked a lot over the years of being together about how, like, he is very afraid of death and I have never been afraid of death. And, like, whether that has to do in any way with religion, because even though now I don't believe that there is a heaven, I still just don't feel afraid of death in the sense of, like, I feel afraid in the sense that, like, I don't want to die. Like, I love my family and I like being here, but, like, I don't feel afraid for whatever will happen to me after I die. And sometimes I wonder if that has to do with the fact that as a kid, I was given, like, sort of very comforting words about the way, like, life and death work in such a way that I have just always felt like everything will be okay. Whereas for my husband, he didn't have that.
Right.
So like, there's things like that where I wonder, like, is there something important that I'm not like setting up correctly for my kids that I just have in me because of Catholicism that I'm not realizing? Right.
Well, like, there's a lot of atheists who are still afraid of going to hell. That
Interesting.
If you were raised in a hellfire and brimstone church, that fear of hell is the main driving force. And if that's the main driving force behind your life is trying to stay out of hell, that can be really, really hard to really break.
Yeah.
And those lingering fears can hang on. And like, I grew up Adventist, so I don't have that. Adventists don't believe in a literal eternal hell. And Adventist heaven sounded like a boring nightmare to me. So I wasn't interested in that. Eternal nothingness sounds just fine to me. Just going back to not existing is yeah. With this hole that you think might be there for your children, have you found any evidence that there actually is?
I do, because I was raised not just in a religious community, but also within like sort of a large family that was like my family was just around a lot when I was growing up, my extended family. I do sometimes feel that my kids lack a certain sort of defined community of adults and kids that are our family, that are our community. Of course, we have our extended family. They just don't live nearby. And of course, we have lots of good friends here in Los Angeles. But they're sort of pieced together from different parts of our lives. So there isn't like a cohesive place where we all go to just spend time together. And that feels a little bit like something is missing to me. I don't think my kids perceive it as something being missing. But just the sense of
community,
like having a particular community that we all belong to and we all have our role in. I kind of wish that there was something like that we had for them.
All right. My when my wife was growing up, her mom went to UU just for that.
Yeah.
And took the kids to UU.
We have talked about doing that, actually. And you're going to think this is really funny, but the main reason we haven't done it is that Sundays in our house are Jesse's flea market day. So like maybe that just needs to be our church. Like maybe we just need to all go to the flea market together every Sunday, and that can be our community.
Well, and there's a specific community of people who do flea markets.
It's true. Yeah. Jesse loves seeing his friends at the flea markets every Sunday. Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds like that's your church.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. We have literally said that to each other. We're like, man, it's too bad the flea market's on Sunday, because then we could like really do this. Like, I feel like we could do that and it would be really great. But I am not going to take my 3 children to UU on Sunday by myself. That sounds really not worth it to me. I would need him to come.
That's what Lauren's mom did. She would take the 4 kids to UU, while Lauren's dad would mow the lawn.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
One of the main reasons was to give him a break from the kids.
What?
Yeah. She got time to go socialize with other adults while the kids got to socialize with other children their own age.
Okay.
And Greg got to catch up on chores by himself.
Wow.
Everybody got something they needed.
I mean, maybe when my kids are older, I don't know. Like right now, my kids are really, they're really a lot. I don't know how else to say it. You know this because you've listened to my show. Yeah. My kids are really a lot. So like my 8-year-old and my 6-year-old, like they will go off and get in trouble, or they will like climb on top of a building. My kid who's 2, almost 3, he's 2, almost 3. So he's a toddler. So he needs me to like be with them all the time. So like taking the 3 of them anywhere by myself is extremely stressful. Like I have to like have really, really have my act together and stay really focused and really calm in order to like get through that with everybody like being intact. So I try to only do that when I absolutely have to. Okay. And so usually on Sundays when Jesse goes to the flea market, we stay home. We just play at home. We just hang out at home and just play.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how much easier things can be at home.
Yeah, it's way easier. Yeah. It's way easier. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. Where can people find your book or books?
Anywhere books are sold. So yeah, it feels good to be yourself, and you can get, I mean, literally anywhere books are sold. It's also in libraries all over the country. And if you don't see it at your local bookseller, you can request it. If you don't see it at your local library, you can request it. You can also go on my website, theresathorn.com, and there's a link to all the different places that you can buy it.
All right. And I'll have links in the show notes. And where can people find your podcast?
So it's One Bad Mother, and it's part of Maximum Fun. So you can go to MaximumFun.org, or you can just search in your podcatcher, One Bad Mother, and we're up with a new episode every week.
All right. Well, Theresa, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Dustin.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And we have some feedback.
Feedback
From September.
Oh, all right. Oh, this one.
No, okay, so there's one that I'm not reading. I responded to by email.
Oh, okay.
There is one, like these all came within a couple days of each other.
Dustin missed it.
And from Gene McGrath, this is on September 17. Just so you know, I listened to Kylie's speech 3 times. I actually rewound the stream. Super adorable. I hope she continues to be a contributor to the podcast.
As long as she is awake, she will be contributing.
It's hard to stop her when she grabs the microphone.
She is full born. Okay, she's going to be a podcaster. She doesn't have the handle on the headphones yet, but that microphone, she knows exactly where to talk.
Oh yeah,
to get her message across, whether it's in English or not.
Yep.
Aw. It was a nice little story about mommies and daddies, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
If you want to get in touch with us, I will be I will pay more attention to what comes in on the feedback form. Yay. I am sorry those fell through the cracks. I feel terrible about it.
He really does. Which is why he's going to invite somebody to be on the show to address their thing, right?
It's really cool stuff about working for church-province separation in British Columbia.
Nice.
Yeah.
From our friends up north.
And we haven't had many Canadians on, so...
No, we need to fix that.
Yeah.
Heck, we know 2, Grant and Sarah.
They're local. They're not in Canada.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying.
using Canadian as in people in Canada.
Oh, it's true. Okay. Well, we know 1 who's probably home. No, wait. He didn't make it down to the Camp Nomad, did he?
No. Darryl.
Oh, no. Darryl. Wonder whatever happened to Darryl.
Probably...
The bears got him. Yeah. I hear that happens in Canada.
All right. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at contact@atheistnomads.com. Use the feedback form on the website at atheistnomads.com/feedback. Send us a voice message through SpeakPipe.
And never get between a mad moose and a bear.
And if you want to support the show, you can find out how at atheistnomads.com/donate, or just go to patreon.com/atheistnomads. And on that note, Lauren, thank you for joining me for...
I'm on the moose team.
Parts of this.
My brain is gone.
And listeners, remember, not all those who wander are lost.
In the woods with moose.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/atheistnomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.